All right, good to go. Good morning, everyone. I'm calling to order the Legislative Committee for 21-21, and the time is 10 o'clock even. Can we have a roll call, please?
Allen? Bates?
Bates here.
Brown?
Brown here.
Silva?
Present.
Weber?
Weber present.
Parag? Shepro? Strathman?
Strathman here.
Comes.
Gums here.
Allen here.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Allen moves.
Strathman second.
Allen moves, Strathman seconds. Roll call.
Allen?
Allen, aye.
Bates?
Aye.
Brown?
Brown, yes.
Thank you. Silva?
Yes.
Weber?
Weber, yes.
Strathman?
Strathman, yes.
Comes.
Gums, yes. Are there any public comments? Any online? Being none and hearing none, we'll go to the legislative update. Currently, our General Assembly is in session. I am keeping an eye on quite a few bills right now. I hope everybody else is doing the same. Nice to have our committee members that are bringing items to me so we can put those on the agenda and get them discussed today. I would like to briefly talk about HB 2415. That is our cannabis revenue bill. It was signed by the governor on April 2nd. I want to thank everyone on the board that took the time to do their witness slips, send emails, contact their appropriate legislators and committee members. I have no doubt that this is going to help all the residents of Kane County, and I think we all did a very good job. So well done, everyone there. I'm going to now turn it over to Joe McCoy. He is the Executive Director of ISACO. He has a presentation for us all to hear. So Joe, if you're there, unmute and go right ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Great. Well, hello, and thanks for the invitation to join you this morning. And I want to thank you also for your membership in ISACO. It's very much appreciated. Before I forget, I want to make sure that all of you are receiving our weekly e-newsletters. If you're not, perhaps let Board Member Gums know, and we'll go ahead and add you to that list. I also want to make sure that you knew about an amendment that was filed in the House Bill 2055 yesterday by Representative Wheeler that authorizes the property for the Kane County Criminal Courts Complex to be used for a private drug addiction treatment center. Is that something you're all familiar with?
That's SB 2778?
It's House Bill 2055.
Oh, 2055.
Yeah, it's an amendment to it. I saw that and I just wanted to make sure that that is something that you're all good with.
Okay, we're aware of that one.
Okay, good. Thought this was a perfect opportunity to bring it up.
There's so many.
There are, and I'll get into that too. Well, we're about 5 weeks away from the scheduled adjournment of the spring legislative session. And I would say that compared to last year, it's been a functional legislative session, although most of the committee work has been conducted virtually. And there are restrictions in place that are keeping lobbyists and the public out of the State House unless they undergo frequent COVID testing. Most of the interactions with legislators have been over the phone and through emails and texts, and of course via Zoom and WebEx and so forth. This has presented some challenges for sure in getting a hold of people at times. And one of the advantages of having everyday access to the State House is how it allows lobbyists to track down legislators more easily. And I think we all as lobbyists certainly miss the opportunity to do that, but I'm hopeful that will be restored to us soon. Even so, ISACO has participated in some of the legislative hearings, and we've also submitted written testimony on multiple issues on several occasions. Just to give you some context, since January, we have reviewed almost 7,000 bills. We are actively tracking almost 800 bills of interest to counties, and this was prior to the initial committee deadlines. We have developed positions on over 200 bills, which is growing with amendments. And we work with legislators in both chambers to introduce several bills that were approved by ISACO's Board of Directors as part of our 2021 Illinois County Action Program. Two of those issues were unanimously passed by a Senate committee, and I'll briefly discuss those before moving on to some of the other issues that I wanted to talk about. And of course, answer any questions that you might have of me. The first ISACO initiative is Senate Bill 1595. It's being carried by Senator Holmes, and it changes the vote threshold required to elect county board chairs and vice chairs in counties where the chairs and vice chairs are elected by the board. We have proposed that the chair and vice chair be elected by a majority of the board and not a majority of those present at a meeting. The bill also establishes some consistency in how vacancies in the chairperson position would be handled regardless of how the vacancy is created. So I know that one is not pertinent to Kane, but that is one of our ISACO initiatives. The second ISACO initiative is Senate Bill 501, and that's being carried for us by Senator DeWitt. And it relieves counties of the responsibility to change the names of duplicate townships unless the townships with the same name exist within a single county. This is a law that's been on the books for many years that has not been enforced by the Secretary of State's office. And so we decided if nobody's enforcing it and it's not causing a problem, let's clean it up so that way somebody doesn't come to counties someday and put you in charge of having to change township names and getting involved in all that politics. Currently, the situation where you have two townships that have the same name in a single county doesn't exist anywhere in the state, although we have numerous examples of multiple townships that have the same names. So I think it is something we do need to clean up, and we're pleased that that issue and the previous issue that I mentioned are moving forward. And those are ISACO initiatives. The legislative, just looking at the legislative process broadly, I would say that it's always a snapshot in time, and we are constantly adjusting our priorities based on what issues are actually on the board and appear viable. And at the beginning of a legislative session, this is obviously a large universe of issues. It's like, trying to take a drink from a fire hose. But as the session begins moving towards adjournment, the number of issues begins to narrow pretty dramatically because a lot of the legislation falls by the wayside based upon opposition. And then there are other bills that might be set aside because of the need to enter into negotiations to remove the opposition. Having said that, right now there are two issues that we've deemed most important among a host of priority issues because these two issues affect all 102 counties. The first of these issues concerns revenue the state shares with counties and municipalities. As you're no doubt aware, particularly if you've been reading our e-newsletters, Governor Pritzker proposed a 10% reduction to local government distributive fund revenue in the state fiscal year 2022 budget compared to what was distributed during the previous fiscal year, which is the current year. LGDF, as you know, is the percentage of the state income tax shared by the state with counties and municipalities, and it's been under duress for many years since the state's kind of devolved into budget challenges. Prior to 2011, the local governments received 10% of all income tax dollars, and there have been cuts since then, and the local share is now 6.06% of the individual income tax and 6.845% of the corporate income tax. ISACO is advocating against the most recently proposed cut and encouraging counties to join us in opposition. We have created a resource page on our website with information about LGDF, and it includes a model letter and a model resolution that can be used by county boards. We've also sent letters to the governor and the 4 legislative leaders urging opposition to the cut. It's possible that the over $7 billion in state and local fiscal and recovery fund dollars that the state will receive and this is the state share, not the local share, might lessen the appetite for cutting the local government share of the state income tax. Most of the federal revenue, I'm told, will be used by the state to pay down debt, and there will, of course, be intense demands from various constituencies and interest groups and legislators about how the remaining funds should be spent. But I think, my message to all of you is that we need to remain vigilant against the proposed LGDF reduction, and we need our member counties to contact their legislators and urge opposition to the proposed cut. Once again, we have these resources on our website to empower counties to advocate against these cuts, and we offer them to you for use in your advocacy efforts. Another priority issue we're focusing on is amending state law to address the inability of the federal government to get census data to counties for the redrawing of county board districts by the June 30 deadline that's prescribed by law. You know, as a consequence of COVID-19, the Census Bureau wasn't able to meet its statutory deadline of December 31st to 2020 to deliver population counts for apportionment. The census did announce that they'll release the counts by September 30th of this year, and that's well beyond the now past April 1st deadline for sending redistricting counts to the states. It's difficult, if not impossible, to redraw accurate updated county board districts without this data. We did introduce Senate Bill 1666, sponsored by Senator Holmes, to address this issue, but that was before the Census Bureau announced that the data won't be available until September. As a result, our proposal to provide an additional 6 months for counties to redraw the county board districts was no longer a viable option. So we went back to the drawing board and we worked with DuPage County and their state's attorney's office, and we developed legislative language to delay the 2022 general primary election until the 3rd week of June. Our contract lobbyists are working on this issue, and we've shared this language with the 4 legislative leaders as well as their senior staff members. But our overall message to the leaders and other legislators that we've been talking to about this issue is that if they aren't able to support a delay in the general primary election, then we certainly stand ready to work with them on any other viable solution that would allow counties to comply with state statute while reapportioning county board districts using sound and accurate data. So we are pretty open about what that solution looks like. I think there's a narrow universe of solutions, but we're going to be flexible. We just want the issue resolved. One alternative solution that we are looking at is the possibility of using legacy file data to redistrict. This data can be obtained in August from the federal government, and it would make it possible for county board districts to be redrawn by late September. We are looking at changes in law that this might require. The catch to this solution is that the data is raw, it's untabulated, and counties may need to utilize software or outside vendors to assist with processing the data. But the bottom line, again, is that we continue to raise the issue with legislators and urge that you do so as well. Just to let you know what our latest effort has been, today we sent a letter to state legislators who previously served as county officials, emphasizing that we need their help in resolving this issue on behalf of counties. So we are continuing to work on this, and we ask that you join us in that endeavor. There are several other
Excuse
issues.
me.
Yes.
Pardon me.
Sure.
Bates, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Bates.
Okay, so I have a question. Legacy data sounds really old. Is this really old data that's not tabulated, or?
My understanding is that it's sound data. It's updated
New?
data.
Okay,
It's-
updated.
But it's just raw. That was the explanation that was provided to me as well.
Okay,
Obviously waiting the additional month for the Census Department to get the data means that they would have tabulated it. So, but we may not have that luxury.
so then every county would have to, so I understand a little bit what raw data means. It means it hasn't been something.
Yes.
But then every county would have the responsibility of tabulating and cooking the data. If you get raw data,
Right.
you have to cook it, right? So
Right.
every county would be responsible for doing that.
Yes, and from what I've been told, I'm certainly not an expert on it, but from what I've been told, you could use an outside vendor or you can obtain software. I mean, so there's a burden associated with it for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Right.
That's enough.
And as we
Thanks.
learn more, we'll make that available. If this looks like a direction that we're going, we'll get more information about it.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, we're just sending up the flag to the legislators saying we need your help.
All right.
Okay.
I have a question. It's Chair Pirog. The decennial data is required in the state statute. Can we have that changed to the American Survey data?
That's one of the solutions that is being discussed. I know that the Senate Democrats, Senate President Harman in particular, have talked about using that. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, it's a possibility, but I don't know if ultimately that is what the General Assembly is going to do. But they might.
Yeah, this is, I think I'm speaking for Kane County, of course, but I'm sure it's a shared burden amongst all of the 102 counties. We're about ready to do the reapportionment, starting with the task force, or introduction to the board today and starting with the task force tomorrow, Thursday. We're in process of hiring specialists in the field to help us out with this reapportionment. There's a hard cost to it. And
Right.
if you're telling me that we're contracting with these individuals only to delay it until whenever, September potentially, when will we know so that we're not putting hard effort into something that is just not going to be of value?
I appreciate that question. You're certainly not the first person to ask me about a timetable, and it's the only answer I have is at this point we don't know until the General Assembly, decides what solution that they might push towards. My experience as a lobbyist is that they rarely do things in a timely manner. So I wouldn't be shocked if we didn't know exactly what that solution might be until the very end of May, because they tend to wait until the last possible minute. That's just kind of their modus operandi with a lot of big issues like this. But we're certainly sensitive to knowing that it's better to know sooner. And I think on top of that, I think there's a lot of anxiety out there. People want to know what the solution is because we have these statutory dates that have to be complied with. And so we are pushing the General Assembly as much as we can to try to resolve this sooner rather than later. But that's ultimately something that's in their hands.
According to state statute, I'm supposed to deliver a proposed map by May 19th.
Right? Yes.
I don't think we're going to meet that deadline.
I agree. I agree. And we're making sure that the legislators know that we're up against these dates. And that's why we keep pushing. We sent out that other round of letters today to the former county officials who are in the General Assembly saying, hey, we need your help. This is a big problem. Don't get so lost and focused on your own redistricting issues that you forget about the counties.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've been speaking, and I hope everybody else has been speaking at great length to our legislators. They know how important it is for me personally, and I expressed that to everyone that I've spoken to. So, we got to push them to get that information as quickly as possible. I think they get a little irritated with me sometimes, but hey, that's what we're supposed to do. So we'll push.
Right. Yeah,
Madam Chairman?
nothing happens in the General Assembly unless somebody's pushing.
Madam
That's right.
Chairman Gums?
Ms. Bates, go ahead.
So we've got two Madam Chairmans in the room.
Yes.
So do you want us to call our legislators about the American survey data or what? What are you
Yeah, we
pushing?
need to just reach out to all our
Pushing on
legislators
that?
and let them know that something has to be done. I don't know what they're ultimately going to do. It's my understanding that all of the election bills are going to subcommittees. There's a bunch of them going there, and I was told, kind of in short, that they will not have any different answers until they get through those subcommittees. So, but that doesn't mean we can't bother them while they're waiting for that. So,
Madam
And they're not
Chair,
in those
Shepro.
committees.
Mr. Shepro, go right ahead.
Yeah, the task force is supposed to meet tomorrow, and I guess I'm thinking that maybe some direction would come out of that. I think we should reach out and tell people they should be aware of the problem, but I wonder if we ought to wait to start dealing with specific things like the survey data and so forth. I think that might be a little bit too deep in the weeds for the present.
Mr. Shepro, that's a great point, and tomorrow's not far away, so I think we should go
Right.
that direction, but I still call people, so to each their own.
It never hurts. And, again, to reiterate, ISACO is agnostic on the solution. We did bring a legislative proposal to them that would, give them the language, what needs to be changed to defer the spring general primary. We never necessarily believed that was the solution they were going to pursue, but we thought it might help our cause if we said we have the problem, we are offering a solution to you. We're not coming empty-handed, but by all means, if there's an alternative that can be embraced by the General Assembly more readily, then we would be in favor of that as well.
Is that the Holmes bill?
The Linda Holmes bill is legislation that we initially filed that just had a 6-month delay to give counties more time to process the data and meet their statutory obligations. But that became defunct when it became obvious, or when it was announced by the Census Department that they would not be releasing the census data till the end of September. So at that point, we worked with DuPage County State's Attorney's Office on language to defer the general primary election, because that seemed to be the only solution that would allow counties to be able to use the final process census data. And so again, we just brought that to them as an option, also letting them know that we could support other options. We just need something to be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know this is a critical issue for everybody.
Mr. McCoy, I don't know if you want, but your toolkit is available also, and so is your newsletter. So.
Okay, perfect timing. I'm just getting into the toolkit now. I'll talk a little bit about that. I've talked about a couple of the issues already that are in the toolkit, one being the LGDF cut that we're opposed to, and then obviously the reapportionment issue. And so I'll get into the other issues. The first, the next issue, I should say, that's in the toolkit outside of those issues concerns a change in the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act to exempt several state shared revenue sources from having to comply with the GATA process. Just for some background, GATA was enacted in 2014 to make the use of grant funds more transparent while making sure that governments are accountable for expenditures, and these are all good things. But the adoption of the federal grant guidelines were intended to relieve administrative burdens on both the state and grant recipients. But unfortunately, state shared revenues were made subject to GATA requirements, and this included revenues that already undergo oversight by the state. So GATA essentially added a second layer of oversight that is unnecessary and cumbersome, and that's why ISACO supports the exemption from GATA for those revenue sources. And those are revenue sources like the local government distributive fund, the motor fuel tax, personal property replacement tax revenue. So I think that's an important issue for counties to support. And there are presently 2 ISACO supported bills that carry this exemption language, and they're in the toolkit. House Bill 412 carried by Jay Hoffman in the House, and Senate Bill 2192 carried by Senator L.G. Sims in the Senate. Moving to the next issue, there are actually a couple of COVID-19 related issues that are in the toolkit that are both supported by ISACO. The first concerns the local coronavirus urgent remediation emergency support program, the Local Cure Act. This one isn't relevant to Kane County because your population is such that you received direct funding from the Treasury Department last year. So I'll go ahead and skip that and move on to the next issue that concerns protection for employers against civil lawsuits related to COVID. The pandemic, unfortunately created additional civil liability for employers and employees. Businesses, government entities, and other organizations are vulnerable to claims for injuries allegedly caused by exposure to COVID-19 at a workplace or during the performance of official duties. ISACO's position is that local government should not be exposed to civil litigation for the transmission of COVID-19 if the local government and its employees were in substantial compliance with state and federal laws and guidelines, or if the transmission doesn't result in in-person hospitalization or death. I think it's important to point out to legislators that the cost of defending lawsuits against local governments are ultimately borne by local taxpayers. Senate Bill 2140 was introduced by Senate Minority Leader McConkey, and it would extend this measure of protection against civil litigation. And we urge our members to ask their legislators to support the bill. You may also want to make sure that your state's attorney's office is aware of the bill. The legislation is still in a Senate committee, but it did receive a deadline extension, so it still remains viable. The final issue in our toolkit concerns the authority of local governments to hold remote meetings. That's obviously become pretty popular during the COVID era. Under current law, local governments can only hold virtual meetings when the governor or director of the Illinois Department of Public Health issues a disaster declaration involving a public health concern that would affect the public body. This provision made the resumption of local public meetings possible. But our view is that local government shouldn't need to wait for an emergency declaration before you can hold a virtual meeting. And Senate Bill 482, which is sponsored by Senator Castro, who I believe used to be a member of the Kane County Board, if memory serves, would allow for remote meetings by removing the requirement that necessitates that there be a declaration of a disaster by the state. This bill didn't emerge from the Senate Executive Committee, but it has received a deadline extension. So again, it's viable at least through this week, unless it doesn't emerge from the Senate and doesn't get a deadline extension. So that for the most part wraps up the issues in the toolkit, but I do want to make you aware of another potential issue. We wrote about this in our News and Views newsletter that went out yesterday. We anticipate that a comprehensive energy proposal will emerge prior to the end of the spring legislative session, and that this proposal will include provisions restricting local control over siting wind turbine and solar energy facilities. Representatives from the wind and solar industries proposed curbing local siting authority during meetings that were organized by the governor's office and held over the last several months. I did participate in those meetings, and ISACO offered feedback about the proposals. We oppose policies that undermine local control over siting authority, and we will alert our members about any legislation that emerges with these restrictions. We don't have a position on the overall energy package, but certainly when it comes to how it might affect local control and local regulatory authority, we might have something to say about that. And I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that this may be introduced over the coming days or weeks, so you're not blindsided by it.
Is that a bill that has a number or a name yet?
Not yet.
Is
Not
that
yet.
the governor's bill?
My understanding is that the governor is going to be issuing a series of recommended policies
Maybe tomorrow.
on energy. Right. And what I'm saying is that some of those policies might include restrictions on local control that might eventually make it into a bill. I just didn't want anybody to be surprised by that.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm surprised. So no, I won't be.
And again, we will oppose the local restrictions. But I'd like to also share a brief update from our federal lobbyists. There's already quite a bit of information out there about the federal COVID relief funding that's coming to Illinois counties as part of the state and local fiscal and recovery funds. So I won't dwell on that issue, but I do want to make sure that you're aware that Congress is presently working toward an infrastructure bill. You may be following this in the news. And our federal lobbyists tell me that we are likely to see indicators by July or September as to the likelihood of this infrastructure bill passing. Right now, congressional Democrats look like they're going to need to go it alone on the issue, but they do plan to hold hearings and use those hearings to try to build support among Republicans for the overall package. And also federal earmarks are officially back. The rules for earmarks have been approved by the House of Representatives, and dates for project submissions have passed in that chamber. The Senate, for its part, are currently working on their own rules, and they're expected to establish an end of April deadline to receive project submissions for consideration. So that wraps up the federal update. And at this point, I'd like to invite anybody on the call to, if you have any questions for me, or you want to talk about issues that Kane County might be concerned about. And I also want to invite you to let me know, and this is an open invitation, let me know of any issues that you think should be part of our 2022 legislative agenda. It's never too early to begin planning that. And we do so through the fall and into the early winter, just so we're ready to go when the General Assembly convenes in January 2022. And thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you.
I want to thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Just so everybody's aware, the ISACO Toolkit and their newsletter are extremely helpful. I encourage you all to dig into those and again, reach out to your legislators. I mean, Joe and I had communicated a little bit back and forth about how important that is for us because there's so many things that at the state level, they're focused on state issues, but the county boards are all going to be affected by these bills that aren't getting much attention. So we have to do that. We have to bring attention to them and push what matters to us. So
Madam Chair?
Ms. Bates, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Where is the toolkit? I'm on your website and I don't see a toolkit and I tried to, and it turns out I need a login to something.
Oh, okay. If you're on our website, if you're on the homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see a box that includes the toolkit. It's tagged.
Yeah, it should, I thought it was attached to the agenda maybe.
Oh, all right, I'll look at that then.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
simple click there for you.
Mhm.
I think it's on
Okay.
the bottom in red.
I'll look for it.
All right. Thank you, Joe. If you want to stick around, up next, we actually are going to speak about CEJA. Ms. Bates, if you want to talk briefly about that, feel free, go right ahead. This
Okay.
is important.
Am I the last item on the agenda?
You are not. No.
Okay, then get out the hook.
Although we did
okay.
address a few other issues, so.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Blair, would you please bring up my PowerPoint? Or I will. Okay, thanks. Okay, so Clean Energy Jobs Act and Kane County. So this is a bit of an explanation about CEJA and why this is the flagship issue for the Illinois Environmental Council and Sierra Club and many other groups who are seeking to still save the planet, but do it equitably and with good jobs. So hence the name, Clean Energy Jobs Act. So please forward, Blair, next slide. So being a former teacher, still once a teacher, always a teacher, right? Here's a little science in case you've forgotten about how climate change happens. The sun shines, the rays come in as ultraviolet, they bounce off the earth as infrared. And some of those rays stay here and keep us warm like a nice cozy blanket. And some of them have to go out back into the space beyond our atmosphere so that we don't get too hot. As the greenhouse gases accumulate, too much of that infrared energy stays inside of our atmosphere. That's bad. Here we've got to the right, you can see our hockey stick global warming lines. This is the science of climate change. It never hurts to do a little review. This is what we've got to fight. It's terrible. Okay, next slide, please, Blair. So here's just a little bit of the disastrous effects of climate change. The environmental community is concerned that people still don't worry about climate change enough. So I'm just reminding people, terrible hurricanes, koala bears. This guy is feeding a koala bear out of his own water bottle. And he says, koalas are usually quite grumpy, but this one took my hand. She was distressed and exhausted. This was from the forest fires in Australia in 2019. So this is real, it's happening. It's already an emergency. Let's keep it from becoming a disaster. Next, please. Air pollution takes a toll on our children. Here's this cute little kid with a inhaler. Asthma is going up. Air pollution is causing more ozone, low level ozone. And look at this over here, the map of American air pollution. We are right in the middle of the biggest blob of dark red air pollution. So this is for our health, for our children's health. Very important stuff. Okay, next slide, please. So here's another very important issue that CEJA addresses. Some people say, well, why do we have to mess our environmental stuff with all this social justice and environmental justice? Well, here's why. Here's the definition of environmental justice. The fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws. But what that means is that everybody needs to reap the benefits of good climate justice, of good climate policy, and everybody has to share the detriments. So we don't have people like Hazel Johnson. This picture is a great picture. And the map behind her is the toxic donut map. So the next slide explains this. So this is more about environmental justice. Altgeld Gardens was originally established as a federal housing project for World War II African-American veterans, our returning veterans. This was labeled the toxic donut. The community was surrounded by 50 landfills, 382 industrial facilities, 250 leaking underground storage tanks, toxic waste, mercury and lead. This is what our African-American veterans were treated to when they returned. This is environmental, this is the meaning of environmental justice. And CEJA is tackling these issues. So it's not just a slap more solar panels up, you know, in some rich farmer's field, or on, you know, I just got my solar panels. I guess that makes me a rich lady who can afford to put solar panels on a roof. I'm not rich, but I'm, you know, certainly white privileged. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, with CEJA, this is what we can have. Quality jobs and investment in communities across the state, a carbon-free power sector by 2030. That means no more coal. This coal has got to go. Well, we'll get to that. 100% clean renewable power sector by 2050, and an increase in electric vehicles. The transportation sector is now our stinkiest, most emission producing sector. So transportation is huge. Okay, thanks, Blair. So look at this great picture of these proud young men and not so young. These are great. So FEJA is the Future Energy Jobs Act. That was passed in 2016. And now CEJA is better, bigger and better. But we've got to get it passed, right? So CEJA will produce jobs and economic justice, clean jobs workforce hubs. I'm going to add something here just so I don't forget it later. Some people who say, why is the environmental movement reaching out so much into the reaching out to minorities, reaching out to, you know, low-income people? Well, one issue, of course, is it's moral and it's ethical. The other one is it's pragmatic and it's practical. We need the faith community. We need the Black churches. We need a coalition to help get our environmental laws and bills passed. So it's the right thing to do, and it's the way to get our bills passed. So that's just so I didn't forget. Anybody can ask questions at any time, please. So here's a graduation of a training program in Chicago. They look so happy. This is, so CEJA will create a clean jobs workforce hubs, and Aurora will be one of the locations proposed. And there's, you know, a couple other, there's Peoria, Rockford, places like that will get these hubs. I picture it being kind of like an unemployment office, but it won't be for unemployment. It'll be for training and for job placement, job creation. It also creates preferences for clean energy companies that prioritize equity. So people who are hiring some of our people of color, people of low income, those companies will receive incentives and preferences for jobs. One very interesting aspect of CEJA is something called the Returning Citizens Program. This is for people released from prison. CEJA also has a training program proposal for people in prison. And when they return as returning citizens, these preferences will be given to companies who hire those people and graduates of the foster care system. So that's pretty important and good policy. Contractor incubation program, so that some of these small companies, startup companies, especially those in people of color, BIPOC, do you know that word? BIPOC, what does it stand for? People of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC. And it expands Solar for All 4 times bigger than FIJA. Solar for All is a program that guarantees that people of low income will be able to get solar panels on their house and participate in the green revolution. Not just like my panels up on my roof, which are not turned on yet, and right now are just a very pretty decoration. We need a couple more inspections. Next slide, please, Blair. So a carbon-free power sector by 2030. So that means that the Illinois EPA will be directing the zero carbon emissions by 2030. Just think, that's 9 years away. So it gives Illinois control of our capacity market for Northern Illinois. The capacity market is an amazing thing. Not only do we pay for our electricity that we use every day, but we pay for this thing called capacity, which is a peak market. That's how much electricity Illinois uses on, let's say, August 15th, to when everybody's air conditioner is sky high. So this capacity market is very expensive. Right now, due to Trump policies, it's based on fossil fuel bailout. We want to move that to clean energy, and we want to move it to the Illinois Power Agency, the IPA, should be regulating this, not people in Washington, D.C. So this also provides for a just transition for fossil-based communities. So we have communities that have a lot of coal mining and a lot of coal power plants. And these power plants are closing, coal power plants are closing. They're not, some of this is just economics. They're not viably, they're not making a profit, they're losing money. But we want to, so these coal power plants will yank out of a community with very little, yank themselves out of the community with very little warning, no job security for the unemployed workers, the tax-based jobs, the libraries, the schools suffer. So CEJA would provide transitional funds for these communities, tax credits for bringing clean energy jobs into these communities. So where there were power plants, sometimes they're putting really interesting high-tech jobs inside the old power plants, or green jobs, or let's put wind turbines and solar panels in these communities for jobs and stabilizing their economy. Displaced workers' Bill of Rights, pensions, healthcare, educational programs, and more. These are based on the polluter pays kind of fees. Communities proactively plan, and they have access to DECIO resources and expertise for getting their communities back on their feet after this transition from fossil-based economies to green economies. Okay, Blair. Okay, 100% clean renewable energy by 2050. So this base is 45% renewable energy by 2030, 100% by 2050. So CEJA is going to free up billions of dollars to help private investment come to Illinois by 2030. We want 40 million more solar panels, yay, and 2,500 more wind turbines. So FIJA was passed in 2016. This is going to have 4 times as much solar power as FIJA. Expand Solar for All, that program that brings solar and the green revolution to low-income communities and environmental justice and social justice communities. And many of our areas would be eligible for that right here in Kane County. It expands goals for energy efficiency. So the cheapest energy you can buy is the one you don't use. This is where real efficiency comes in. And if we want to be able to power our world with renewables, we are going to have to become more efficient, which makes sense. Let's stop wasting energy. So this expands goals for energy efficiency for both gas and electric. You know, ComEd is doing this. That's why they'll give you $50 for an old refrigerator that's clunking out in your basement. And NICOR has efficiency programs also. Well, they're not doing this just to be nice. This is part of the law. It removes exemption for large electricity users. They have to become more efficient. And it creates a health and safety fund for low-income home retrofits. Like if you've got dangerous wiring, it will also help with safety. And there's also something called, I forget the name, it's like pay on your bill. If you can borrow money from ComEd and pay it back on your bill, your electric bill, if you want to put insulation in your attic, for example. Okay, Blair. Okay, building a clean transportation sector. This means electric vehicle infrastructure rebates and incentive programs for buying electric cars, electric vehicle access for all. So this is something that would be like maybe the last mile of transportation, or you know, these cars, we don't have them in Aurora, but in the city, you can just rent a car real easily. What do they call those? It's like share, it's almost like share.
Like a zip car, like a zip car.
Yes, thank you. And they would make sure that those were electric, so that that in town, when you're zipping, when you need that last mile in the transportation desert, that would all be electric. So beneficial electrification plan, more chargers on more public places, things like multi-home, multi-family buildings would have more access to chargers. Buildings that get built, condos and things like that, would be required to make it easier for people to have plugins. So much more about promoting a clean transportation sector. Blair? So how will we pay for all of this? We don't have to go into this with a lot of detail, but some people do want to know. We would be increasing our renewable portfolio standard, reforming the capacity market. Remember I said that's that little, capacity, that peak, the peak market. If we can control that ourselves. I looked at my electric bill last night. It's not there, but when we're going for, oh dear, the mayor's calling me, shucks. Reforming the capacity market will save us a lot of money, and making sure polluters pay. Polluter fees for coal and gas plants, coal excise tax for coal mining. So polluter pays is not just a fancy slogan. It's something that we have to have in order to make sure that these polluters don't just skip town and leave these communities with a mess on their hands. So, but the cost in human lives, trips to the emergency room for kids with asthma, floods, hurricanes, things like that, droughts, fires, the cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of action. Okay, next slide, please, Blair. Okay, why Kane County needs CEJA? So up until a month ago or weeks ago, CEJA was not quite so personal to me. I mean, we've been fighting for it for years, but all of a sudden, my plan, which I'd be happy to, which I'll be presenting at the next E&E committee, is we are conducting an RFP for a 2-megawatt solar system on the back acres of the Judicial Center. If anybody would like a walkabout with me, I'm going with Mayor Kevin Burns today at noon to get his blessing, because it's in his town. We want him to like the idea. I have room for one more on my walkabout at noon because he won't count, right, for Open Meetings Act. He's not on any of our committees. Okay, so we're conducting an RFP for a 2-megawatt solar system. You've seen the one, maybe you've seen the one at Mooseheart or at Fox Metro, 8 acres. Funding for this project will come from funds created by CEJA. All of a sudden, this has gotten very personal. We need the solar renewable energy credits to make this a viable economic project. There's a we will get prices for both with and without the solar renewable energy credits, but and maybe we'll have some savings and be able to go ahead with the project anyway. But we sure would like to get this savings of $150,000 per year for 25 years. So pretty soon we're talking real money here, millions of dollars So my ask of you and everybody is to please help us get CEJA passed. Any questions about this so far? Okay, Blair, next slide, please. Okay, I realize I should have had the number for this bill plastered all over the world. We just call it CEJA, but it is on the agenda. So we're having a virtual lobby day in Springfield. You can't do it virtually because it's not really in Springfield. Our virtual lobby day is this coming Monday, April 26th. This is to help us with lobby day. Please register. This is my ask to you at Illinois Environmental Council right here, ilenviro.org/lobby day. You will be contacted by email by a group leader for a Zoom meeting with your representatives on April 26th. My rep, Barbara Hernandez, was one of our original sponsors. So, but we don't have Linda Holmes signed yet. I think she'll sign, but she usually signs at the last minute when every I is dotted and T is crossed. So that is my ask to you. I think that's my last slide. One more, please. Yeah, go back again, Blair. You're so helpful, Blair. So this is my ask to you. Also, Madam Chairman Gums, may I ask for witness slips on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I believe that if everybody, I mean, having spoken to Senator Holmes about this, a couple other senators, a siege is a very complex and confusing bill for NICOR and ComEd to wrap their minds around. So there's going to be a lot of negotiation with them, but they read those witness slips. So if we're, if you're in tune to this, please go to that myilga.gov and fill out your witness slips so we can help Mavis here with CEJA.
Yeah, we want to get our solar panels put up in the Judicial Center, and we want to get that $150,000 savings for our taxpayers. And so
I just want to say, Mavis, you do such a great job. I appreciate your presentations also. We all learn so much because I told you I'm environmentally dumb. So I learn a lot from you. Thank you for bringing this to us. And anybody else have any questions for Ms. Bates?
Madam Chairman, it's Deborah Allen.
Ms. Allen, go right ahead.
Mavis, thank you again for such leadership. You're just taking us to the solar sky in good efforts. Can I ask, the 8 acres at the Judicial Center, is that in the southwest quadrant?
Yes.
Okay, so it's behind the Judicial Center and to the west.
Yes, to get there, I usually park in the municipal, in the multi-use facility parking lot. And then we trudge across the jail parking lot and go up into the foothills. There's some big berms there that would make a wonderful solar field because it is sort of a prairie there, but it's not a well-maintained natural area. It's full of foreign invaders. Oh, one more thing about our solar field is that we are putting it into the RFP that it has to be seeded with native plants and pollinator friendly, which is driving my my RFP guy a little crazy. He's going, "What do you call that?" I say, "Pollinator friendly." So that will be, yes, it will be in that southwest quadrant. If you'd like to put on your hiking boots, I'll give you a tour.
I can't do it today, but I'm going to follow up on that. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Mavis, just don't wear orange by that jail.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment. This is Brown here. Mavis, I don't know. Thank you for your presentation, and I certainly appreciate how energy conservative, I guess I could say you are. But I'm wondering if you have had a chance yet, or if not, maybe you could contact Gary Holm at the City of Batavia. He is on the board for NIMPA, and you may be aware that Batavia, Geneva, Rochelle are all, and I think Naperville, which is not in the county, but the other Batavia and Geneva are, and you could talk to Mayor Burns on this as well. But they're all part of the Prairie State Power Agency through NIMPA. And a lot of this that you're talking about may affect those municipalities in a different way than the rest of the county. So
Thank you.
I think
Yeah.
it's something that would be, in fact, I was at a meeting last night that the city council was in Batavia was discussing this. And I think it'd be a very good conversation for you to have with him, because I think it would be just very good for you to do.
We have a special task force that is working on the Prairie State issue right now.
Right.
You know, the thorns have thorns on the Prairie State issue because it is a very thorny issue. I'm not an expert on this, but I can tell you that CEJA will be good even for those communities.
Oh, I agree.
It will save even them
Absolutely.
money. Even though
Absolutely,
they're
and I
working
think that's the
on fees.
consensus as well from the Batavia Council and from Gary Holmes' perspective as well, that Siege is good. Something that was discussed last night was the difference between clean energy and renewable energy, and the time frame of 2030 of what is trying to be proposed, and is that a realistic date with everything that's being proposed? That's only 9 years away. It'd be
Right.
great to see it. And then something else that was brought up, and I hate to keep going on about this because
No,
this is
go
a
ahead.
legislative committee, not an energy committee. But something else that was brought up was all the car manufacturers that are announcing that they're going to go to electric vehicles. So that's
Yes.
going to increase the need even more, which is good, but it's going
Yeah.
to increase the need even more for electric generation. And is the world ready for that much more of a demand of electric generation if you're going to try to go to clean and or renewable energy? So I appreciate your comments, and I won't go on anymore, but if you haven't talked to Gary, I'd encourage you to do that.
Okay, well, I am meeting with Kevin Burns today, Mayor Kevin Burns today at 12. We're gonna go do the walkabout. But there is a lot of very smart engineers working on this issue of how to make sure there is enough energy if we turn off the coal plants. So that's definitely a serious issue, an important issue.
Look
And
at you making connections to get bills passed. Who knew?
okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
All right, very good. So next we're going to have Ms. Jody come up and do a presentation on the Drainage District Commission election. And it's Senate Bill 1692. Thank you, Jody, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I don't usually attend this committee, so it's great to hear the update from my SACO and the other bill updates. This resolution will go to Agricultural Committee. I emailed it out to this legislative committee. It just happened, so the meetings fell that legislative was before agriculture. So I appreciate you giving me the time this morning. Just in a bit of history, the county's 2040 plan makes it very apparent that our agricultural grounds are very important to us in the preservation of those grounds as we go forward into the future. And so one of the challenges with our agricultural areas is drainage. Back in the late 1800s, the farmers all got together and they formed drainage districts and they improved the drainage on their farm areas. Once this was completed, the drainage districts kind of fell away. And then we saw a resurgence of these drainage districts in the 1950s, where many of the drainage areas were maintained and back to what they originally were designed by those farmers in the late 1800s. Again, we saw those drainage districts kind of fall apart after that happened. And about 20 years ago, we were tasked by the county board to start working with farmers in Kane County and reactivating our drainage districts. So this has kind of been a 20-year project that is close to my heart because it is very important to our agricultural farmers in Kane County to be able to farm all their acreage and not have them their crops drowned out every year. We've worked closely with Illinois Association of Drainage Districts. We've been a member for several years. And they have this proposed legislation that we became aware of when their newsletter came out this last month. One of the challenges that the Collier County areas have with drainage districts is much different than the downstate and central Illinois areas. Downstate and central Illinois have large tracts of land that are farmed by local farmers. In the Collier County areas, we have a lot of development pressure. And one of the pushes to reactivate many of our drainage districts has been the challenges with absentee landowners not maintaining the drainage on their land. The proposed legislation changes how elections are done within the drainage districts across the state. Instead of allowing each parcel of land to receive one vote towards a drainage district electoral, it would give each acre of land one vote. So when we have a lot of our community members that are living on the farm on smaller acreage, such as 5-acre parcels, we see that those community members are the most active in these drainage districts and are working with these absentee landowners to get the drainage restored. This would put them at a severe disadvantage, and Kane County specifically, because those are the people that are really pushing to improve the situation out there, and it would give more power to the absentee landowners in Kane County. We've reached out to our drainage districts that are elected. We do have drainage districts that are appointed by the county board. This legislation would not impact those. And they have similar concerns to what we brought up. We've also talked with the Kane County Farm Bureau and the McHenry County Farm Bureau. And they actually in McHenry County had the same situation occur where an absentee landowner that owned several large pieces of property was able to kind of control their drainage district board and reduce the maintenance on the systems up there. So we've presented the resolution in which we're not objecting to the Senate bill. We'd like to work with Richard Lyons from the Illinois Association of Drainage Districts and Senator Bennett to revise the legislation such that the change between the existing legislation and the proposed would remain the same for Kane County, in that each parcel would receive one vote towards the drainage district commissioners as opposed to each acre of land. And I would like to just ask for any comments that you might have, concerns or questions.
Does anybody have any questions? I just want to thank you for bringing it to our attention. A lot of these things are overlooked, especially by new people like me. There's so many bills, but if anybody is willing to do witness slips, those would be helpful for this cause also. And we'll be watching agriculture tomorrow because I'm sure it'll be a little bit more talked about then. Thank you very much for being here.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Anybody
Ms.
else
Walnick.
have any questions?
Thank you.
All right, very good. So all right, we're going to move on to, well, we briefly discussed Senate Bill 1325 and Senate Bill 1666. Those are our pushbacks for the census data. We talked about those earlier. I don't know that we need to rehash those. Senate Bill 1325 has quite a few signers on it. Senate Bill 1666 has one. I've spoken to quite a few legislators trying to get them to sign on to a few different things, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens in these subcommittees so that when all is said and done, we don't find ourselves in litigation. I don't know how we're going to avoid this, to be honest with you, but if we don't get the census data issue fixed, we're in a bad spot. And then want to talk about Senate Bill 2278 just a little bit. This is, they're going to have a hearing 4/21 at 5 p.m. It's virtual room number 2. And I do apologize. Put up here. Basically, this one amends the county's code. It provides that a county that is authorized to impose special county retailers an occupation tax for public safety, public facilities, mental health, substance abuse, or transportation may establish a 7-member board which shall oversee the use of funds received from the tax. Senate Stallman is the one that proposed this. The underlining bill allows for the counties to voluntarily create a special board to administer the county occupation tax on public safety, public facilities, etc. The amendment, however, makes creation of the special board mandatory as opposed to voluntary. So that's something that we have to maybe think about reaching out, saying that we want to maintain that ability and not make it mandatory. So I don't really have anything else to say about that. Does anybody else have any questions about that one in particular? All right. Are there any comments from our co-chair?
Good morning, everybody. I have sent out to everyone a spreadsheet with contact information for our state and federal representatives. If you have not received it from me, please let me know. And I have been, my laptop just came back from being in a repair shop. So if you haven't received it, let me know and I'll get that out to you again.
Very good, very good.
Madam Chairman, this is Deborah Allen. I have an unrelated thing to ask about. Is it appropriate to do it now?
Yeah, give me 1 second. The new amendment to Senate, I'm just reading an update here. There's a new amendment to Senate Bill 2278, SA number 2, that requires the creation of a 7-member board, but limits it to expenditures on mental health. ISACO does oppose this one, so it's something that we're going to have to really look at, talk about. We'll have conversations and see how we feel about that one. But thank you for that update. And Ms. Allen, go ahead with your off topic.
Sure. We got a pass-through message from Jane Talish, the chairman, from Lauren Underwood's office, having to do with an initiative that she and other people are working on to fund Fox River Task Force having to do with flooding. Do people remember seeing that come through? My question is of course we could always write letters, as our co-chairman have suggested that we do. But I wondered if, since this one is in our backyard or our front yard, is it worth it to try and do something as a committee or as a county board to support this particular initiative? Hold on for just a second. It was an email on Monday from Jane for Chairman Pirog, and it's called the Fox River Flood Risk Assessment Program. So I just wanted to, how do we deal with this? Do we do it personally, or do we try and do it as a group because it's important to the county? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, we could do a resolution to something like that if we all want to agree to support such a thing. I think that would be the appropriate way to go. So if you want to send me an email or something, we can maybe do a resolution so we can create that.
Madam Gums, Madam Chair, is Ms. Walnick still there?
No, she stepped out.
Oh, I'm sure she would have
Yes.
her expertise.
I would assume, Ms. Allen, that will be brought up at agriculture tomorrow too, but yeah, just shoot me an email and we'll go forward from there.
Absolutely. I think I'll bother Jody also to see if she's doing anything. Thank you, Ms. Bates.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Strathman, for doing that spreadsheet. You saved me a lot of time too. I don't know what I would do without you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I don't know what I would do without you. We talk so often. It's unbelievable. I also want to say thank you to staff. This is my first in-person meeting, so I can't thank you guys enough for doing everything that you do. We don't have any reason for executive session, so I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Mr.
Bates
Brown.
moves.
Ms.
Strathman,
Bates,
second.
Yeah, Brown and Bates. All right, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Joe, thank you very much. I appreciate it's always an open invitation. Thank you.
Well, thank